I dream of these people every night. The only thing I worry about is that some total unknown that nobody ever heard of comes along.
Ooh, a soapbox. It's time to look taller. It's great to be here. This is my 24th trip to Iowa over the last number of months, and every time it's better and better because the energy's higher, the groups are bigger. My first crowd was not as big as this one. And the voting's closer and closer. We're only 4 weeks away from the caucus. And it does not feel like this, but you all are among the most powerful people in our country today. You have the future of the country in your hands. I've done the math. Do you know how many Californians each of you is worth? Well, you came to the right place then. You came here, you came to Iowa, and you now have super democratic powers. Each Iowan is worth about 1,000 Californians in terms of the power you have to shape the future of this country. How many of us are here in this cafe right now? I'm going to give a Trumpian estimate. There are 400 of you here in this There are about 40 people in this room. And even that is the equivalent of one football stadium full of Californians. Right, that's the power you have. That's why it's a thrill and privilege to campaign here every single time. The question is, how are you going to use this power in 4 short weeks? And to me, you must use that power to help solve the problems that got Donald Trump elected in the first place. Now, you all are Democrats for the most part. How did you react when Donald Trump won in 2016? Groan, sick, nausea, shock. I reacted the same way. I said, oh my gosh, the country just decided to take a bet on the narcissist reality TV star as our president. And though I was shocked, we all had family members, friends, and neighbors who celebrated his victory. And I know that's true for all of you because Donald Trump won Iowa by more than 8 points. You have to ask, how the heck is that possible that he won the purplest of purple states, Iowa, by that much? If you were to turn on cable news at any point in the last several years, why would you think that Donald Trump is our president today?
Russia.
Hillary. Emails. Fox News. Deep state. Conspiracies. Racism. Ignorance. All of this been mashed together into some kind of toxic brew and said this is why. But I'm a numbers guy, as you can tell, the math, the Belton. And the story as to why he's our president is clear in the numbers. That we blasted away 4 million manufacturing jobs over the last number of years. And where were those jobs? Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri, and more than 40,000 right here in Iowa. I have been to those towns here in Iowa, and after the manufacturing plant closed, the shopping district closes, people leave, the school shrinks, that community never recovers. I have seen that same story play out in Missouri, Ohio, Michigan, over the last 7 years running Venture for America, a nonprofit I started in 2010. And I have to say, first I just want to give a shout out to my wife because I was a pretty normal guy when I decided to start Venture for America. I was like, hey, how about I quit my job, start a nonprofit around the country trying to help people grow businesses. She was a good sport about that. She was an even better sport when I, 7 years later, was like, hey, how about I run for president of the United States? And occasionally someone thanks me for running for president, and I say, thank my wife, because 1, she let me run in the first place, and number 2, she's been sacrificing much more than anyone else while I've been away. So I started Venture for America, and I saw firsthand what happened in these manufacturing towns, and I saw that it led Trump to become our president, where if you draw a line between industrial automation in a voting area and the movement towards Trump, it's like a straight line up to the right, if you look at the data. Unfortunately, what we did to those manufacturing jobs, we're now going to do to retail jobs, call center jobs, fast food jobs, and on through the economy. How many of you notice stores closing around where you work and live in this part of Iowa? Stores closing? Why are the stores closing? Online shopping. In a word, Amazon. Amazon's hooking up $20 billion in business every single year, causing 30% of your stores and malls to close forever. Most common job, Most common job in our country is retail clerk. Average retail clerk is a 39-year-old woman making between $8 and $10 an hour. What is her next move when the store or mall closes? How much did Amazon pay in federal taxes last year?
Zero.
Zero. That is your math. 20 billion out, 30% of your stores closed, you get zero back. You've all seen the self-serve kiosks in the CVS, the grocery store, the fast food restaurant, but it's not just the obvious changes we can all see in front of our eyes. When you all call the customer service line of the big company and you get the bot or software, I'm sure you do the same thing I do, which is you pound 000, say human, representative, until you get someone on the line, right? Raise your hand if that's what you do. Oh yeah, we all do that because we hate that software, it's terrible. But in 2 or 3 short years, the software is going to sound like this. Hello Andrew, how's it going? What can I do for you? It'll be fast, seamless, delightful, a little bit overly friendly, perhaps. What is that going to mean for the 2.5 million Americans who work at call centers right now, making between $10 and $14 an hour? The rubber is really going to hit the road when the robot trucks hit our highways. How many of you know a truck driver here in Iowa? 3.5 million truckers in this country. And my friends in California are working on trucks that can drive themselves. They say they're 98% of the way there. If you doubt that this is coming, a robot truck just transported 20 tons of butter from California to Pennsylvania 3 weeks ago, free of human intervention. Why butter? I have no idea. If you Google robot butter truck, maybe they have a big stack of pancakes. What is this going to mean for the 3.5 million truckers or the 7 million Americans who work at truck stops, hotels, and diners that rely upon the truckers getting out and having a meal every day? How many of you been to Highway 80 at Davenport? It says 5,000 people stop there every day. What will that number be when the trucks don't have drivers? This is the greatest economic transformation in the history of our country, what experts are calling the fourth industrial revolution. When's the last time you heard a politician say fourth industrial revolution? 3 seconds ago. And I'm barely a politician. So I was seeing all of this in 2017. Trump wins. I have oh my gosh, I should really dig into why he won. I see the information, I see, okay, fourth industrial revolution, 4 million manufacturing jobs accelerating, 30% of stores and malls closed, most common jobs in our country are going to disappear. And I went to our leaders in DC and I said to them, what are we going to do to help our people manage this transition? And what do you think the folks in DC said to me when I said, what are we going to do? Someone just made the same noise. So earlier, this trip in Iowa, someone made the Scooby-Doo noise. They're like, oh. So the 3 answers I got out of DC were, number 1, we can't talk about this. Number 2, we should study this further. And number 3, we must educate and retrain all Americans for the jobs of the future. How many of you heard someone say something like that last one? Right? Educate, retrain all Americans for the jobs of the future. It sounds pretty good. But I'm the numbers guy. I said, hey, look at the studies. You all want to guess how effective government-funded retraining programs were for the manufacturing workers who lost their jobs in the Midwest?
10%.
10%. That's a very good guess. I angered you low because it is low. The real number is 0 to 15%. They're a total dud. The reality is half of those manufacturing workers who lost their jobs never worked again. And of that group, half filed for disability. You then saw a surge in suicides and drug overdoses in those communities to the point where America's life expectancy has now declined for the last 3 years in a row. You all know the last time America's life expectancy declined 3 years in a row?
The Spanish flu. Civil War.
World War II is a very good guess, but you have to go back further than that. The Spanish flu of 1918, a global pandemic that killed millions. That's the last time America's life expectancy declined like this. It's highly unusual in a developed country for your life expectancy to ever decline. Ordinarily, you get richer, stronger, healthier, and everything just keeps on edging up. But here in the U.S., we've gone down and then down and then down again. So when I said this to the folks in DC, they said, well, I guess we'll get better at retraining then. And then just went back to what they were doing. And one person said something that brought me here to you all today. He said, Andrew, you're in the wrong town. No one here is going to do anything about this, because fundamentally this is a town of followers, not leaders. And in order for us to do anything about this, you would have to create a wave in other parts of the country and bring that wave crashing down in their heads. I said, challenge accepted. I'll be back in 2 years.
Yeah.
The conversation was 2 years ago, and here we are.
Woo!
You all are part of that wave that will rewrite the rules of the 21st century economy to work for us, to work for you, to work for our families, to work for people. I'm here now, totally anonymous a year ago, and now I'm fifth in the polls to become the Democratic nominee and rising very, very fast. My campaign raised $16.5 million last quarter in increments of only $35 each. So my fans are almost as cheap as Bernie's. But there are an awful lot of them. Zero corporate PAC money, no wine caves. No offense to anyone. All grassroots, people-powered donations. Because this is our chance to retake our government and make it work for us. Most Americans look up and they see the government pipes as clogged full of lobbyist cash, millions and millions of dollars, and they despair there's nothing they can do about it. They're generally right, there's nothing they can do about it. It's up to you all to flush the pipes clean. In 4 weeks. That's the magic. That's the power. So the question is, how will we rewrite the rules to work for you? If you're here today, you heard at some point that there's a man running for president who wants to give everyone $1,000 a month. Remember when you heard that? And the first time you heard it, I know you thought that's a gimmick, that will never happen, this is too good to be true. But this is not my idea, and it's not a new idea. Thomas Paine was for this at the founding of our country, called it the Citizens' Dividend for all Americans. Martin Luther King fought for this in the 1960s, and it is what he was fighting for when he was killed in 1968. I know this in part because I sat down with Martin Luther King's son in Atlanta, and he said this is what his father was fighting for when he was assassinated. It was so mainstream in the 60s that 1,000 economists, including Milton Friedman, one of the fathers of economic theory, endorsed this plan. It passed the U.S. House of Representatives twice in 1971 under Richard Nixon. And then 11 years later, one state passed a dividend where now everyone in that state gets between $1,000 and $2,000 a year, no questions asked. And what state is that?
Alaska.
And how do they pay for it?
Oil.
And what is the oil of the 21st century? Technology, software, AI, self-driving cars and trucks. A study just came out that said that our data is now worth more than oil. How many of you saw that study? How many of you got your data check in the mail last month? If our data is somehow now worth billions of dollars, where is all that money going? That's right. Facebook, Amazon, Google, Apple, and the trillion-dollar tech companies that are paying zero or near zero in taxes. Do you see how this works, Iowa? You get sucked dry, your neighborhoods get depleted, your stores closed, and the biggest winners in this economy pay nothing. That is what you're here to change. That's what you're going to use your power for. Jeff Bezos is worth $115 billion today, post-divorce. Do we think it's appropriate that his trillion-dollar tech company pays less in taxes than everyone who's here today?
No.
Is that Amazon's fault?
No.
No, that's our fault. We have to be pretty dumb to let them get away with paying zero in taxes. If we get our people our tiny, tiny fair share of every Amazon sale, every Google search, every Facebook ad, eventually every robot truck mile and AI work unit, we can easily afford $1,000 a month for everyone in our country. Particularly because when this money is in your hands, where will it go? How will you spend it? How much of it will stay right here in Iowa? Most of it. Not all of it. You might get your own Netflix password instead of sharing all the time. But most of the money would go to to car repairs you've been putting off, and daycare expenses, and Little League sign-ups, and this coffee shop, and local nonprofits, and maybe Democratic Party dues, and religious organizations. This is the trickle up economy from our people, our families, and our communities up. This would give every American, particularly those in rural areas or places that are getting blasted by automation, a real path forward. This is the economy you can create and make real in just 1 month. And this money, as it makes you and your family stronger, healthier, mentally healthier, improves people's decision making, improves people's optimism. You just heard from Kyle Christensen, right? And Kyle is, where'd Kyle go? Is he already grabbed away? Do something.
He's watching the live stream.
That's cool. So Kyle's one of maybe 15 or 14 or 13 families around the country we're giving $1,000 a month to. And there's an abstract argument you can make, be like, hey, everyone should have this foundation. And then when you see it in real life with Kyle and his mom, or Jodie Fassey and her daughter, or Mallory Shannon, or all of these families around the country, you see that $1,000 a month is a game changer for many of us, because it helps take the boot off of our throats and gives people a chance to breathe and think more clearly, make the kind of decisions that they want to make, do the kind of work that they want to do. Right now we're getting beaten over the head with the fact that things are great in our economic measurements. GDP record highs, corporate profits record highs, stock market prices record highs, headline unemployment record lows, and yet we have this sinking feeling that things are not great. Corporate profits are at record highs, yes. You know what else are at record highs right now in the United States of America? Suicides, drug overdoses, stress, mental illness, student loan debt, financial insecurity. You know what are record lows in the United States? Starting a business, getting married, having children. Anything that's a sustained act of optimism is now at record lows in the United States of America.
The big problem, and we have a few problems, but like one major problem is that we're guided almost solely by GDP, stock market prices, and profitability. And the issue is that with AI and new technologies, those things are just going to keep on going up and up. Well, not the stock market. I mean, the stock market eventually is not going to stop going up. But GDP is going to keep going up, even as more and more Americans get displaced. You know, I mean, if you have like trucks magically drive themselves, that's like a boon to GDP, because you can get the same work done without having to spend all this money on humans. But is that going to be good for human well-being? In a lot of communities, it's going to be devastating for human well-being. So we need new measurements that actually correspond to human well-being. Things like median income and wealth, levels of engagement with work, mental health and freedom from substance abuse, childhood success rates, environmental quality, proportion of elderly in quality situations. So you can map these things and say, hey, like, we need to start driving our economy towards human well-being. We need to make the market serve us as opposed to having us all serve the market. Because if it's us all serving the market, we are going to be screwed. Because the market is going to zero out the truck drivers, it's going to zero out the accountants, it's going to zero out a lot of people upcoming. AI is just now hitting a point where it's going to be able to assume the roles of hundreds of thousands of call center workers and bookkeepers and a lot of other things that we have a lot of people doing right now. So we need to have new measurements for the economy that correspond to our well-being, and then start driving in that direction. And the great thing here is that this would free up these corporations to start doing things that help people. Right now, I know CEOs and board members, and they say, my hands are tied because I must optimize for one variable. Like
shareholder.
Yeah, quarterly profitability, shareholder value, like, which are tied together. So if there's something else, I can maybe get away with it for like 1 quarter. If things are going really well, I can like do something on the side and be like, it was good PR. So we need to fundamentally change the way that the goalposts are set up if we want to reorient towards an economy that will serve us in what is, again, the greatest technological shift in human history.
Yeah. The realigning of the goalposts is like, right now, this rock is so small, it takes 40 days to sail around this rock. And the geopolitical leadership is kind of overthrowing the we are one mentality. and the prioritization of markets is overthrowing the humanity.
Yes.
And these things being paired together, they're making the goalposts about money and about geopolitical leadership and ownership and control and things like that, which I think a lot of people are racing towards, but at the same time, it's putting a back seat on humanity, putting a back seat on the mentality of shifting the goalposts a little bit towards humanity. What would that do? How would that change the world for us? And you're also working on a digital social credit in
Yes.
that direction as well, which this is another really cool pillar. It acts as kind of you're doing some tokenomics here.
Well, so you have to look at the issues on the ground, because as a startup guy, I'm always like, okay, there's like the stuff in the boardroom and the the whiteboard, and then it's like what's happening on the ground. So what's happening on the ground right now is that, again, more and more American men are leaving the workforce, and men tend to deteriorate without work. I'll include myself because I'm a guy and I resemble this. The first thing we tend to do is play a lot of video games. It's like 75% of this now freed up time goes to video games.
And this is like a lost meaning or purpose in life. So now what do we turn to?
Yeah, if you're just an idle dude, like the progression seems to go by the numbers, because I'm a very data-driven guy. It's a lot of video games, which works well in your 20s, but then you start getting sad in your 30s. And then when you start getting sad in your 30s, you go to drugs, alcohol, self-destructive behavior, occasional violence and criminality, and early death. That's like the general progression without work.
It sounds fucking horrible.
By the numbers, this is a different situation for men and women. Idle women do not disintegrate into antisocial behaviors in the same ways. So you have to look at the ground floor and say, okay, hundreds of thousands of former truck drivers who now you're saying, okay, here's some money, but that doesn't solve the problem of what you do all day, because people need structure, fulfillment, purpose, work. So if we say to the market, being like, hey, market, value these people, it's going to be very, very difficult, because the market's like, I don't really need these people, at least the way the monetary market's set up. So what we have to do is, if you have these new goals for the economy, then you can say, you know what, if you nurture a child, volunteer in the community, help your neighbor, give someone a ride, repair a boiler, any of those things that move society's goalposts along, like install solar panels, work on infrastructure, then we're going to reward you.
Time banking.
Time banking, yeah. It's based on a system called time banking that's in effect in a couple hundred communities around the country, where if you do something for someone, then you get a time dollar, and then you can say, hey, I've got this time dollar, I can give it to you, and then you have to do something for me, and then someone's like, okay. So you create all these touch points in the economy that are independent of skill level. That is just like anyone can show up and staff your garage sale or babysit your kid. There are different things that people can do, and then you tokenize those activities, you guarantee it, and as president, I will do this in 2021, you guarantee a monetary value, and you say, look, these tokens have real value. You bring them to a bank, we'll give you $1 for every 10 social credits. But the beauty of it then is that you will tax their redemption, and so people will not redeem it very often. What they'll do is they'll just build social credits, and then they'll use the social credits with each other.
Yep.
They'll go to businesses that will be rewarding positive behavior and want to be seen as hey, we love it when people volunteer in the community. So if you come here, social credits, and then they get your credits and trade it to the government. so there are all these things that can be done. And you can build this parallel economy around pro-social activities that's accessible for people at every point in the skill ladder. That is the vision.
Yeah.
That's where we have to go. Because if we listen to the monetary market for too long,
They're not going to value these things like volunteering. They're not going to value taking care of kids, taking care of elderly.
my wife right now is home with our 2 boys who are 5 and 2. She works harder than I do. And the market value of her work is zero.
Zero. Yeah, and I guess technically, if you had to hire somebody else to take care of your 2 kids during that time, the market value of that would be $30-50 an hour or whatever for 2 kids.
Yeah, I mean, you can get nannies and whatnot, though. There is a difference.
Oh, it's like a parent.
Yeah, and there are many things too that are similar. Like if you look at the way the market values, for example, home health care aides, like taking care of your aging parent, you'd be like, oh, I can pay someone to do that. Right now, the market rate for that is $22,000 a year, and there's a turnover of 100%. Pretty much no one wants to do that job. of taking care of the elderly, where because we remunerated at very, very low levels.
Yeah.
And so what's happening in a lot of these contexts is you look at it, and the market tries to seek like the lowest price point that it can get away with, because but that causes its own set of problems and friction. So the goal for us has to be to invigorate some of these activities for a couple of reasons. One, we need them because our society is disintegrating. Like as we're sitting here, labor force participation down. Our life expectancy has declined for the last 2 years because of a surge in suicides and drug overdoses, where 7 Americans are dying of opiates every
This
hour.
mental health shit's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's going to get worse if we don't figure out the automation.
Yes, it is all tied together.
Yes.
Where you have Americans getting pushed into this mindset of scarcity, where they don't have the bandwidth to process things rationally, and then they become more impulsive, they make lesser decisions, they get angrier and more xenophobic and the rest of it. I mean, if this sounds familiar, this is exactly what we're going through right now. This is a giant automation story. And so we have to start owning the problem and then have real solutions that are going to be massive. That's the generational challenge. But that's why I'm running for president, to galvanize energy around real solutions instead of the garbage stopgaps that are being presented.